Hello and welcome. Welcome back to the third lecture about the Evansa Gambit. And today I would like to show you my practicing on ICC during my simultaneous exhibition show when I played against ICC members and used the Evansa Gambit, the famous gambit which we already studied for 2 lessons, and this one is a third lecture. Usually when I used to play the Evansa Gambit, I tried to show all the power of the development to my opponents and like to help them to understand the ideas of this opening and what exactly black has to avoid in the opening. So I will show you a few games which I played, as I said, against the ICC players. E4, E5, Knight F3, Knight C6, and Bishop C4, Bishop C5 is the most common continuation after Bishop C4. B4, Bishop takes B4. My opponent, of course, accepts the sacrifice, and after C3, he decided to move his bishop to A5. After Bishop A5, White, as we studied in our previous lectures, challenged the center immediately after D4, take pressure, put more pressure over the E5 square, and ready to develop my pieces like bishop to A3, queen to B3, creating the strong threats over the black's king. Especially the weakest spot in black's position is F7 pawn. So my opponent in that game decided to accept the pawn. He takes. And after short castling, he doesn't like to capture the one more and just simply answered with D6. C takes D4. Now white is having quite strong center. In some situation, I'm threatening to play Knight G5. Let's say if black is playing something like Knight E7, this is a serious mistake. Why? Since F7 pawn now is a real weakness. After Knight G5, white is intending F7 pawn, force black to play short castling, but then coming with a double attacking move, Queen H5, creating the combination threats over the F7 and F7 pawns, and black is lost. So in case of Knight A7, Knight G5 is very powerful. So black, instead of playing like Knight F6, like we studied from the Morphy game, so Bishop B6, so he played immediately H6, trying to avoid move like Knight G5 in the future and prepare to play Knight A7 or Knight F6, somehow completing the development of his king side, making castling, and black could look for the bright future. Indeed, white is playing now Queen B3, which is very tempting move, intending F7 pawn, and force black to move out his queen. Queen comes to E7. Of course, I consider here a few options. I would say quite serious, quite strong already here to play something like Knight C3. Bishop takes C3, almost forced. Queen takes C3 when white is keeping strong pawn center, 2 bishops, and very active opportunities to increase his space advantage and to break the center. Quite strong here is to play something like Bishop A3. But what is the main problem we see in this position? The main problem is a bishop on A5. And white could try using it. How? simply push any pawn using the tactical weakness. Bishop on a5 is protected by only knight. And if knight is going somewhere to d8, white is simply playing. Queen a4 check, and black's bishop on a5 is gone. So, you see, one bad move, h6, black wastes some time and immediately pays for it. Doesn't change the situation, move like knight e5, since white is simply play knight takes e5, and once again d takes e5, queen a4, the bishop is gone. And if queen takes e5, then bishop b2, g7 pawn is under attack, queen has to go somewhere, and once again after queen b5 the bishop is gone and the game is over. Black is just piece down with no any compensation. So instead of playing h6, let's look at that position. Instead of playing h6, black could try playing queen e7, immediately trying to protect his pawn on f7, but this move is also not so great, since after c takes d4, once again I am intending d5 in case of d6. Let's say d6, I push just simply d5, and once again the queen e8 threat is too powerful. So black is almost forced to play something like a knight e5, knight takes e5, queen takes e5. But after check, bishop d7 and queen captures, queen capture a1, looks like black is surviving here, but simple move knight c3, look at the queen. Queen is totally trapped. No way to save the strongest piece, and black is losing completely and doesn't change any scene. Move like b6, queen b4 and a5. After queen b3, black's queen is still trapped. Black is completely lost. Let's back to position after queen e7. One of my opponents, after c takes b4, decided to prevent white from playing bishop a3, and he immediately plays bishop b4. What can we say about this move? Black plays already so many moves with the same piece in the opening. Also queen has been developed, which is preventing black's knight from obtaining some square like e7 and completing the castling. So white, of course, immediately attacks black's position. Strong center and better development are more important factors than material. d5, knight e5. Bishop b2, very strong option. So now if knight takes c4, then after bishop takes g7, black is losing his rook on h8. So black has to answer like something like bishop d6. Once again, I would like to pay your attention. d6 doesn't work. The question is simple. White is coming with a double attack. Check, and black's bishop is gone on b4. So black plays bishop d6. White is continuing his development. Knight bd2. Whatever black captures, knight takes c4, knight takes c4. Look how strong white's position. g7 pawn is almost impossible to protect. Move like king f8 will be made by e4, e5. And black is completely done after d6. His pieces are not developed. White is gaining more and more advantage. In the center, and completing his task quite easy. So rook comes to c1. After c takes d6, black's bishop on c8 is completely locked. So white is having clear superiority in this situation. And don't forget, white is just 1 pawn down, and so great compensation. f6. One of the most important rules when you are continue attacking, having better development, is to trade already developed pieces by your opponent. So knight takes e5, most natural continuation. F takes, and breaking the center. f4, white is opens up completely the center, so black, where black skin is still situated there. Knight f6. Now I'm creating more pressure over the e5 pawn. Force black to capture. After bishop c5 check, king h1, black plays knight takes e4. F takes e5. Ready to sacrifice exchange, but looks how great all white pieces are situated. Not talking that I'm threatening at some point d5, d6, breaking through. So what would happen in case of knight f2? Let's see. I would play bishop takes, of course. So rook takes, bishop takes, and d6. So what black can do now? Where to go? C takes, e takes, and look at black's king. Completely hopeless situation. So white is playing next move something like queen d5 or queen c2, and then rook comes to e1 after black's bishop retreats from f2. So black's king has no rights to castle. All pieces are sleeping, as usual happen in the Evansa Gambit. And look at white's great bishops. So my opponent decided anyway to try to open up the position after d6, intending to develop his bishop somewhere to g4. So I'm just locking e6, not allowing to develop this bishop anymore. Short castling. Black castled, but queen c2, knight f6, knight g5, bringing more pieces to the fight. c6, bishop d3, intended bishop h7 check. Check. Knight f7. Maybe white has more simple continuation, but this is quite strong. So intending rook e1 next. Black decided to capture the bishop, at least keeping some material advantage. But after rook e1, white is completing his nice game. Queen cannot go to f8, since after rook e8, black is losing immediately. Bishop e3 doesn't change anything. After rook takes e3, queen takes e3, f8, queen, knight takes, rook takes f8, and checkmate. What else black can do? Queen d8, same. Rook e8, and black has to decide. Black has just to call the day. Game is over. Once again, black had no time to complete his development. White, with all power of his minor pieces and pawns, destroy black's position and organize the very direct and fast attack on the king's side. Okay, so we continue with the next game. played last year with the same opening, Evansa Gambit. E4, E5, Knight F3, Knight C6, Bishop C4, Bishop C5, B4. And in that game, my opponent decided to take all the pawns and try to survive against my initiative. So after D4, E takes D4, castling short side, and black takes one more pawn. D takes C3. Queen B3. Queen E7. Knight takes C3. So White is developing his knight and intending knight D5, and as we know, now black is almost forced to capture on C3, since knight F6 will be made strongly by knight D5. Knight takes D5, E takes D5, and black is in a very, very bad position, very dangerous situation, which happened. So knight F6 is not so great because White is playing simply knight D5. And after knight takes D5, E takes D5, knight E5, knight takes E5, queen takes E5, we are following the advice Bobby Fischer, bishop B2, like he played against the Fine from the first lecture we studied. So, in case playing knight F6, my opponent decided to remove my knight. Bishop takes C3, queen takes C3, and to play queen F6. Black is trying to trade queens or to protect the pawn on G7. But after E5, queen G6, and bishop A3, White is having huge initiative. Despite the fact White is 2 pawns down, black is having real problems to complete his queenside development. Knight E7, rook A to D1, short castling. Somehow black castled on the king side, but all his pieces are pinned and pawns. Black cannot move the pawn on D6. White is simply capturing, and rook takes D6. Knight from C6 cannot go because E7 knight is hanging. F pawn cannot move as well, trying to remove White's super strong point on E5, since F7 pawn is also pinned. B6, bishop B7 not possible because D7 pawn is under attack. So White is just continue improving his position, increasing his advantage. Rook F to E1, rook E8. I just played simply bishop B3 to show my opponent that he cannot move. So also intending at some situation bishop C2, aiming the black's queen on G6. King H8. Black is trying to play maybe F6 in the future. So in any case, leaving the A2 G8 diagonal, but H4, first and quite unpleasant threat, knight G5 is on the air. F6, black decided to get rid of my pawn on E5, but this is a probably decisive mistake. Why? Black pieces on the queen side are not developed, and when we open up the position, it only favors White, who is having better development. So after E takes F6, queen takes F6. I even decided to exchange queens and then once more trade my bishop for a knight. What for? Usually you ask, why shall we exchange so good pieces? Here it's very concrete situation. Black cannot capture on e7 with his knight, since after bishop f7 we are winning material immediately, thanks to our great rooks d1 on e1. So black almost forced to capture with the rook. In that case, I'm trading almost last developed pieces by black and come with my rook and reach the back rank. Rook is coming to e8 and black's king in the very bad situation. Not talking about the black's undeveloped pieces, rook on a8 and bishop on c8. After rook e1, my opponent realized that he is in big trouble. Knight g6. Check, king g7 and push pawn. h5 not only attacks black's knight on e5, but as well creates the mating threats. So black's king is in a box. Knight e5. Black is trying to sacrifice back at least 1 pawn, but who cares? Knight takes, f takes. I just decided to move my pawn. g4. Still, I'm 2 pawns down, but look at black's pieces. I'm like having 2 pieces up. After g4, c6, my opponent is trying to play d5 and somehow to lock the bishop activity, but too late. After check on g8, king h7 and bishop f7, the game will be finished with a beautiful mighty mating construction after g4 and g5. Once again, black had no time to complete his development. White's strategy was to open up the center and then even, which is quite surprising, trading the opponent pieces which are already developed and keep black with undeveloped pieces, which is allowing white to use all the power of his already developed pieces against black's completely undeveloped. And this is a great strategy which worked pretty well in that game. And one more last game I would like to show you, which played in 2006, when my opponent decided to move his bishop after c3. He decided to play with his bishop to c5, trying to keep the bishop on the more active outpost. What is the main problem with that move? Bishop on c5 stands a bit, I would say, badly, because after d4, e takes d4, and short castling, of course, white is not playing immediately c takes d4 as we studied before, because after bishop b4, we have or to trade some pieces after bishop d2, or to play with our king and to lose castling rights. So much better just to complete our development, just to play short castling. What black has to do? If black plays d6, we are reaching c takes d4, bishop b6 and knight c3 position from the Morphy game, which according to the theory even today, white is having more than a compensation. Great pawn center, better development. My opponent decided to play d takes c3. And this move leads to the classical combination. So bishop on c5 is hanging. So I came with short bishop takes f7, which is quite standard in all kind of position like that one. King takes and queen d5. Thanks to white's control over the center, white is winning back the bishop on c5, and black's king is still stuck in the center. King e8. Queen takes c5, d6, Queen takes c3. What is the main problem here for black? The problem that black's king has to spend a lot of time and energy to find the safe place on the board. Don't forget, the king cannot castle anymore. Knight f6. Black is trying to develop his pieces first. White is playing rook e1, intending e4, e5, breaking the center and open file for his rooks, attacking the best target, black's king on e8. Bishop g4. Knight bd2. Bishop takes f3, knight takes f3, queen d7. So black may be considering going with his king to c8 and b6 and king b7, taking the king away from the center. But it's too late. White is open up e4, e5. D takes e5. Knight takes e5. Force black to capture. Rook takes e5. Now, where to go with the king? After king f8, white just plays bishop a3 and the game is over. Rook e7 next. Same would happen after king f7. White is just playing queen b3 check. And black's king cannot find the safe place anymore. King g6 is losing immediately after rook g5. And the mate is coming very soon. So only way is king d8. White is continued developing with the tempo. Bishop comes to g5, pinning the knight, and intending that rook at some moment would come to d1. Not immediately, of course. h6. Bishop takes f6, g takes f6. So after rook e1, white is not only intending rook a to d1, but the pawn on f6 is hanging. Queen f7, black is trying to protect it. Rook comes to d1, not immediately. White simply plays first queen c5, intending rook d1 and rook e7 with the forthcoming mate on c7. Black's answer is only rook e8. Rook d1 check, king c8. Queen f5 check, king b8. Looks like black is somehow surviving this difficult position, but white made one move and black had to resign. Look at that. Using weaknesses of the back rank, white is destroying connection between black's pieces. Queen takes f6. This sacrifice is decisive. In case of queen takes f6, rook takes e8, and the mate is coming next. So my opponent decided to play rook takes e1 check, rook takes e1, and queen d7. Too late. Queen f8, queen c8, and rook e8. Black resigned. Once again, game finished when black is still having pieces undeveloped. So, from these games which I showed, when I practicing the Evansa Gambit, I always show to my opponents that it's extremely dangerous to take material, to win material, but to have luck in development. So when you have such a situation and you have better development, more active pieces, strong center, trying always to break through, Open files and diagonals for your pieces. Play very concrete. Keep the initiative. Attack your opponent. This is the most important rules. Tennis rule number 1. When you possess the initiative, when you have the advantage, attack. If you are not going to attack, your advantage will disappear. So we have always to follow the rule number 1 of the first world champion, William Stanitz. Thanks to everybody, and our last lecture about the Evansa Gambit, I would like to show you the modern way of playing, like after 100 years since Captain Evans, even 150 years, the world champion Garry Kasparov showed the modern way of playing in the Evansa Gambit and take this old opponent as his one of his most dangerous weapons and won a few very nice games. So follow me with next lecture about the Evansa Gambit. Thanks everybody, and see you next time.